In tonight's Dateline Defense, a deadly mistake in Afghanistan. 3 days ago, the U.S. military carried out an airstrike on a Doctors Without Borders medical clinic in the city of Kunduz. A dozen medical staff members and at least 10 patients were killed. General John Campbell, the commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan, testified before a Senate committee today.
To be clear, the decision to provide aerial fires was a U.S. decision made within the U.S. chain of command. A hospital was mistakenly struck. We would never intentionally target a protected medical facility. I must allow the investigation to take its course, and therefore I'm not at liberty to discuss further specifics at this time. However, I assure you that the investigation will be thorough, objective, and transparent.
Joining me now with the latest is Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer. He's a CIA-trained senior intelligence operations officer, best-selling author, and senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research.
Hey, Morris.
Tony, we'll talk about that airstrike in just a moment, but first let's focus on Kunduz. It's been the scene of heavy fighting in recent days between the Afghan government and the Taliban. Tell us more.
Well, two factors here. First, the good news is Thursday and after, the Afghan forces, who, by the way, were essentially you had advisors, military advisors, fighting side by side with them. I know the White House doesn't like talking about that.
Right.
But they won. They pushed the Taliban out, which is significant.
Because they had taken, the Taliban had it a week before.
The Taliban had taken it, and by the way, they had completely taken control of the town. So
that's right.
That's why I think part of the mistake here, we'll go to the hospital here in a second, but that's, to me, that's good news. Secondly, clearly, Morris, we are concerned about what happens in Afghanistan. The Pentagon, General Dunford, the new chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Campbell, the current commander there, we just saw in front of the Senate, all feel that we need to stay there, that we need to sustain the victory. We have been able to make a great deal of progress, and frankly, if we follow the Iraq model and we leave, I think you would see an inevitable result just like Iraq. And let me add something to the picture here. I've got confirmation that ISIS, the enemy of both the Taliban and us, is in at least 10 provinces. That's nearly 1/3 of the provinces of Afghanistan, and they may well control 7 of those 10 provinces. So this is no small issue. Us leaving at this point in time would be detrimental in any number of reasons.
All right, now back to the airstrike, Tony.
Sure.
General Campbell says Afghan forces requested it. Right. They were under Taliban fire, but it's unclear if U.S. military personnel targeted the clinic in error or if they followed procedure. What do we know, and what will the investigation reveal?
Well, two things on that. Again, first, we were following procedure. General Campbell noted it clearly. One of the things that happened, Morris, is that once this happened, Doctors Without Borders notified the military. It took time. It takes time. This is not, this is the 21st century, but things don't happen instantaneously. You just can't. So it took time to work through the chain of command. With that said, to defend General Campbell and the Pentagon, look, this wouldn't be the first time the Afghan forces have said something that's false for purposes of targeting something they felt they wanted to target. While we don't attack hospitals, I don't mean to say this with anything more than the truth. The Afghan forces may have thought Taliban were in there and forced, basically attacked them because they thought the Taliban were there.
It wouldn't be the first time the bad guys, it wouldn't be the first time they hide out in hospitals and schools and churches.
So we wouldn't do that. If we knew Taliban were there, we still wouldn't do it. With that said, if the Afghan requested the attack, they gave us the coordinates, we didn't do adequate vetting, there may well have been Taliban there killed within the context of that. Again, we wouldn't have done it had we known that, but it doesn't mean we weren't tricked by the Afghan forces to do it.
Well, supposedly they'll give you the GPS or whatever coordinates they use, and then something's supposed to come up on the American side that says, wait a minute, that doesn't go with what we're supposed to be targeting.
Absolutely. We do. I mean, I did that in 2003. Absolutely. Feeding in friendly coordinates, knowing where your folks are on the ground is hugely important. It doesn't always work. And again, this is the heat of battle. This was a battle. This was our forces with the Afghan forces taking back a city. So the heat of the battle, everything's going. I'm not trying to excuse what happened. I'm just saying that there's certain realities here that I think the investigation will resolve, and we may well have been tricked into hitting that.
Now, General Campbell says extraordinary efforts are being made to protect civilians.
That's correct.
Will this airstrike have a dramatic impact in our involvement in Afghanistan?
The answer is I think people will be more reticent in authorizing the airstrikes, but we cannot stop them.
Right.
Again, this is a war. We have done well there. I think General Dunford did well when he was in command there. General Campbell's now doing well. Again, this is not something we can afford to lose. We cannot, we've had 15 years, Morris, of blood and treasure invested there. I just don't want to see it fade, and I don't think anybody else wants to see it fade like we did in Iraq.
Now, all of this, as you've talked about, comes at a critical time. The U.S. will cut its force in Afghanistan from 9,800 to 1,000 at the end of 2016. General Campbell says conditions have changed. Let's get back to what we were talking about. Should troop levels change with them?
No, absolutely not. Again, we've never left Japan, we've never left Korea, we've never left Germany. The idea here must be of what we do to sustain the victory as well as our relationship with the Allies. Look, Morris, let me just cite Syria. Syria, you have the Russians moving in to help one of their allies. Allies help allies. The Afghan government, for better or for worse, is trying to right itself. They are on a path of some level of democracy. We didn't cut and run out of Korea. We're still there. There's now a functioning democracy. I think we have to sustain the investment based on what is working. Right now, things are working. The Afghan forces did win in Kunduz. I think we ought to continue to invest and push that for what it is. I think we can do more. I think we can pull a victory out of Afghanistan still.
Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer with the London Center for Policy Research. Thanks again, Tony.
Right. Thank you, Morris.